When you think of smartphones today, you typically think of Android, iOS, maybe even BlackBerry. But back in 2009, there was another player on the block that brought some brand new features and things that we take for granted right now. Let's take some member berries and take a retrospective look at the Palm Pre. 2009 was the Wild West for smartphones. Apple was really just starting to establish its dominance. The App Store had really just come into its own. Android was starting to really establish itself as a dominant player, but there was still room in the marketplace for a third operating system. But the folks at Palm, the makers of the Trio and the Pilots, thought they had the answer. Enter the Palm Pre. The main selling feature of the Palm Pre was its operating system, WebOS. Maybe you're not familiar with it or you think it's just what powers LG TVs today, but it was one of the best OSs I have ever seen, and I think it had the best way to handle multitasking even to this day. Rely on a system of cards. You can move cards around, rearrange cards, even swipe them right off the screen to close apps. It was really elegant.
And relied solely on multi-touch for pretty much everything except for typing, which we will definitely talk about.
One of the killer features that WebOS and the Pre had is something called Synergy, and integrated information from a ton of sources. It allowed you to sign into accounts like Gmail, Yahoo, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Outlook, and took all those contacts, integrated them into a single contact list, which sounds kind of simple today. Back in 2009, it was totally revolutionary.
On the software front, I think Palm did an absolutely incredible job. In retrospect, it ended up being really underpowered and weak hardware that I think doomed the OS.
It shipped with 256 megabytes of RAM, 8 gigs of storage, and a tiny, minuscule 3.1-inch 320 by 480 screen, and it was riddled with problems from day one.
The hardware of the original Pre was really underpowered, and it held back the OS from being as smooth as what people were used to with iOS at the time.
That wasn't ultimately what did the Pre in. They made a few mistakes. First, they launched exclusively with Sprint, and they had a creepy ad campaign that went with it. It was a strange looking lady that didn't resonate with anyone. I remember camping out at the Sprint store to get a Palm Pre. First one I got, took it out of the box, set it up, it was broken. Went back to the store, second one, set it up, broken again. Wasn't until my third Palm Pre that I finally got one that worked. And that was again when the issues with the Palm Pre was quality issues. The slider mechanism felt loose and could often wiggle all about. And the issue became known as, and I still think it's the best name for a problem today, Oreo twist. The phone would slide out and reveal a keyboard, and for an OS that relied solely on touch, having a physical keyboard just didn't seem right. Let alone a physical keyboard that was in portrait mode, so it was really small keys. They weren't very tactile, they'd often get stuck down, and it was a horrible typing experience. Even from launch day, Palm was still in a little bit of legal trouble. If you remember back in 2009, Palm actually got a little bit legally creative, and when the Pre initially shipped, you could sync it with iTunes, which imagine Apple was not overly happy about, and it started a cat and mouse game. Apple would fix iTunes, it would break the sync, Palm would release an update, and it would fix it again. It went back and forth for a while. Even went as far as Tim Cook stating, "We will not stand for people ripping off our IP," and Palm responded that they, quote, "have the tools necessary to defend themselves." So setting up for a really cool legal battle that never ended up coming to fruition. Now the Palm Pre did live long enough to see a few updates. We saw the Palm Pre Plus, we saw the Pre 2, and even the Pre 3 started shipping for AT&T, then was pulled from the shelves. Palm was ultimately bought by HP, thought they were going to be the savior of the operating system, ended up just kind of bearing it and ultimately selling it off in piecemeal. And this is kind of the end of a sad story for the Pre. I loved the software. I think if they launched a little better hardware and better carrier partners, we'd still be using WebOS devices today. It was extremely elegant. Look how it worked. Back in 2009, we hadn't seen anything like this before, and I think Palm deserves credit for paving the way for a lot of things that we take for granted today. But unfortunately, the Palm Pre and the Palm line is no more. If you've got an old Pre, Pre Plus, Pre 2, or Pre 3 kicking around, dust it off, plug it in, turn it on, and remember how awesome things used to be.